Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, turn the voyages. You are listening live to episode number 54 of the All Things Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. It is a new season, new background logos behind us. As always, Brandon Lewis, Joey Schneider.
Brandon, 3 games already in. I have watched every game with the exception of one, and I was on the road, but I was listening to it, and oh my god, every game is just exciting as hell. Even the blowouts, Brandon, because I love a good blowout from time to time. But we're gonna get into all of that. Our first 3 games are in the books. We're gonna talk about each and every one of them, what we saw, what we think, some key players to those victories. The one thing we will not do this episode, Brandon, we will not criticize any players. We came into this and we said that there is no criticisms as of just yet. I think we'll reserve that for maybe 3-4 weeks from now. But everyone seems to be playing good. There's a few players who obviously we think could potentially be playing better, but first 3 games, it's really hard to judge players right now at this point. But the Cavs do look very, very, very good. So why don't you start us off with the season opener in Toronto?
Yeah, obviously the Cavs shot that game 108, 105. A lot of that, I think we both kind of attribute to Darius Garland, who went down in the second quarter of that game with an eye injury. Now, silly me, when it first happened, my initial reaction, I will tell you, was, oh, it's just an eye poke. He'll be fine. They'll put some drops in it. He'll be back in the second half. And they come out and John Michael, Austin Carr, Serena Winters, who do a great job on Valley Sports Ohio, they report Garland is out for the game with an eye injury. And silly me, I think, okay, hopefully he'll be fine to go by Saturday night against the Bulls. And then it obviously comes out after the game that unfortunately he had a laceration of the eye. Now, it wasn't a dirty play or anything like that. Obviously, we hope that DG is going to be okay. But I think you could really tell in that first game, because, we kind of talked about it a little bit off air, that they had planned for pretty much this whole offseason, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell together, kind of feeding off one another. And you could tell when a guy goes down like that mid-game, it's really hard sometimes for the team to adjust. And I think the Raptors just came out in the fourth quarter. They had a little bit more energy. The Cavs struggled from the field in that game in the final period after really taking control, the second and third period. And that, to me, I know obviously we are going to dive into all 3 of these games individually. But my biggest takeaway so far from really the first 3 games is the Cavs have looked really good, and they have all come after really slow starts the first 6 minutes of the ball game.
Yes, that first game, the Raptors are extremely young, like the Cavs, and they're going to give you a ton of energy. And you don't want to make excuses for a loss, but I will say, I think that they came into that game with they went into that game with a specific game plan, and obviously Darius Garland was, it was revolved around Garland and Mitchell and maybe a few others. And when Garland went down, they kind of had to scramble a little bit. Okay, Mitchell was going to take over point guard duties, and then who is going to move where. And you can kind of see that a little bit through the game. So I think Garland going down kind of ruined the tone for that game for the Cavs. And as you said, you could see, they didn't shoot that well, especially down the home stretch when they really could have used some of Garland's offense or even his, his passing prowess and finding open guys. So I kind of attribute that loss to that. No excuses. It's still a loss in the record book. But I didn't think they looked terrible, especially against a really good Raptors team. But they did come out game number 2 against the Chicago Bulls, who you and I both last week predicted will not make the playoffs. And they beat the brakes off of the Chicago Bulls.
They
It
did.
was absolutely amazing. Even your boy Isaiah Mobley hit
Hit
a
a three.
three. Oh my god. That game, it wasn't close. It wasn't close on it was they came off to a little bit of a slow start, got the lead by the end of the first quarter, never looked back and beat them by what I think 28.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with that. Obviously, again, they started off really slow. I think they were down 10-2, 4 minutes in, and then they went on something like a 50-25 or something like that type of run to really blow the game open. Big contributor to that was three huge 3-pointers, I think, from Kevin Love as well off the bench, which we saw last year. Jetty Osmond came in as well off the bench and made some key shots. I think that was just a really good, solid victory. Everybody really contributed in that ball game. And, through these first two games and even that game against Washington on Sunday, you could tell, and I told you this, we all know Donovan Mitchell is a star slash superstar, but you could tell immediately, boom up, he makes a difference on this Cavs team that they did not have last year. He has been absolutely spectacular for the first three games. He has 100 points on the dot through the first three games, which, I mean, if you think about it, that is averaging over 30 points a contest. Just this Cavs team, and we talked about it, and they have mentioned it on the broadcast as well throughout the first three games. There is something about this team where it doesn't seem like that there is an ego. It doesn't seem like there's any issues brewing in the locker room. It doesn't seem like anybody cares about the amount of points, about the amount of rebounds, about the amount of assists they have. Everybody from the starters and Karis LeVert, who we have not mentioned yet, has looked really good for these first three games. He's looked like the LeVert the Cavs thought that they were going to get at last year's trade deadline. Everybody from the starters to the bench have contributed, and they have fit their role perfectly. And you can see, in my opinion, even though it's early, the makings of a really good basketball team.
Oh, absolutely. And when you get Charles Barkley to say something good about Cleveland, you know that something's brewing here with this Cavs team. And and like you said, it just seems like from top to bottom. Me and you talked about this ad nauseum for I don't know how many weeks of how deep the bench was, and we are really seeing it. How deep this bench is actually going, and who's playing where. And you can see, we talked about versatility with the with different players playing, different positions, having the ability to play the 2 and the 3 and the 4, the 3, 4, 5, and we're seeing that on the court these first three games. But so they go into Chicago, they beat the brakes off of the Bulls, and then they go and they face the Washington Wizards in the home opener, a 2-0 Wizards, I believe, as they were, and it seemed like they had control of the game pretty much all the way up until the end. And it looked to me as if they just took their foot off of the gas.
Yep.
It didn't seem like they were crumbling. It just seemed like they stopped, and the Wizards just hit a couple of shots. Porzingis hit a shot. Kuzma finally came alive in that final, minute and a half, 2 minutes, and they tied the ball game up. And going into overtime, the Cavs found a way, as they do, on the back of one Donovan Mitchell, because he is just, like I said, he is just an animal. The crowd at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, chanting MVP as he's knocking down free throws. And the Cavs ended up winning that game, which they shouldn't have even gone to overtime, but they did, pulling out the win. And the Cavs are now 2-1 heading into tonight. We are recording on a Wednesday, so Cavs 2-1 tonight. But what do you think about that Wizards game? Because I just thought I thought they played extremely well, and they just took their gas off at the end.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And I didn't even think it was really physical fatigue from playing Chicago the night before. I just thought like you said, they kind of thought the game was in hand. Kind of relaxed a little bit mentally, I think, and taking care of the basketball. We saw the Wizards obviously down in Mitchell turning the ball over 2 times in the last 20 seconds that even led it, going into OT there. So I just think that from there, again, this Cavs team is still very young. We talked about it. A lot of these guys on this team are either younger than me or about the same age as me. So they are still learning how to win. And they are still learning how to win as a team. We know guys like Mitchell, guys like Kevin Love, guys like Robin Lopez, who has been really good coming off the bench, replacing Jared Allen. These guys have been in playoff series. In Kevin Love's case, he's been to the finals. He's been an NBA champion. He knows how to win these games. But that's probably only 20%, if so, of the roster. A lot of this roster still hasn't really experienced their first playoff games yet. And so they're going to use this experience against lesser teams, in my opinion, like Washington, to build on this momentum as they get deeper into the season and as they face heavier competition.
And you know what, Brandon, I want to kind of use like that analogy with you and me. You're like Darius Garland, a young up and comer, and I'm more like Kevin Love,
Yep.
Good looking, seasoned, a champion.
You had to throw the good looking in there.
I had to throw the good looking in there, even though it may or may not be true. My wife might be the only one that gets a say in that. But anyway, I want to throw this out there. I want to give a huge shout out to someone who me and you have absolutely torn apart, and rightfully so, because he started hot last year, and I'm hoping he's going to stay hot all year this year. And he wasn't even coming off the bench at the end of last year. But my God, Cedi Osman. I mean,
it's the same Jetty we saw at the beginning of last year.
it's not. It's not even. But it's not. He's better than he was last year. I mean, I think he's averaging like 13, 14, 15 points. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's hitting the three. He's when the offense seems like it's becoming a little stagnant and maybe Mitchell's playing a little more ISO ball than we'd like to see, Jetty's the one who's cutting.
Yeah.
Jetty's the one who's trying to get, to get around blocks. His defense has been pretty good. He's knocking down those threes. He's getting to the rim. He's fighting for rebounds. Jetty has been what we hoped he was going to be at the end of last season. If this is how he would have played at the end of last season, we would have made the playoffs last year.
No, I completely agree with that. Again, we talked at nauseum throughout the offseason. Jetty went from getting big minutes off the bench at the start of last season and not even really in the rotation. There was obviously multiple reports that him and Dylan Windler and some form of that was going to be packaged up, and it never occurred. And here's Cedi Osman, and again, just like he was really prior to the All-Star break last year, and you just said it. It seems like him and now Love is obviously in there well at some points, but it does feel like when Cedi Osman's in the game, it is whenever the Cavs get off to a little bit of a wall offensively, or they just need a spark. Cedi is that guy on both ends of the court who will make that shot that will all of a sudden turn a Cavs team that is down by 6 or 8 points in a leading by 6, 8, 10 points.
Yeah, and that Wizards game, something that really surprised me, because I went back and I watched the full game. They seem to really be doing their best with their second unit in. Mm-hmm. Like they really every time the Wizards would kind of get closer, they'd bring in Neto, or Lopez, Jetty, Love, and that seemed to be when they would start pulling away again. And you got to give it up for Captain Hook, Robin Lopez. Yes. He has and I got to give up to Neto too. He's not going to give you a triple double. He's probably not even going to give you double digit points, but he seems to hit baskets when the Cavs need it.
Yep. And now my biggest question for him though, and I think me and you kind of talked about this a little bit, is what's his minutes going to look like when Darius Garland gets back? Because we have seen it looked like in game one, Mitchell basically became the backup point guard when Darius Garland went out, and now Mitchell is obviously the starting point guard, and Isaac Okoro has been inserted into the starting lineup since Garland went down. But I think I kind of at least thought in the back of my brain that Neto was going to be your primary backup point guard until Ricky Rubio got back. And we obviously heard the reports for the whole offseason of the Cavs want to keep one of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell if they're both healthy on the court at the same time. Um,
I just I don't I like I said, and me you've talked about that. I don't necessarily like that. I don't think that you can start both players and then keep one on the floor at all times. And I don't think you need to. I think that there's enough good players on this team, and we've seen it these first three games where they can start running away with a game without either of them in. Now, when I think that when Garland comes back, Neto should still have a role on his team. Obviously, I think that he might get 12 minutes a game or 10 minutes a game, but I think that you can have periods of the game where you rest both
both of
Mitchell
them, yep.
and Garland, have Neto at point guard because you can have Levert who can handle the ball as a come
A
up the court, point
point
forward,
shoot, yeah, basically a
point
point forward.
forward, basically. Um, there's other players that can handle the ball. So I just, I mean, Okoro, I don't know. I wouldn't. He can bring it up the court. I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily saying that he's going to be a point guard, but I don't think that. I'm not saying that you're not going to want one of those two in, but I think that if you need to give him like a 3, 4, 5 minute break, you can have Neto in there, and he's extremely effective. We saw it these first three games. We didn't get to see it that much against Toronto, to be 100% honest, but you can see it against the Bulls, you can see it against the Wizards. That when he gets in there, he's a good facilitator, and he can hit. He can hit that jumper and
Yep.
and get to the rim. I just don't want him firing up threes.
Yeah. But I do think, getting back to your point on Robin Lopez, I had said during the offseason, and me and you both agree, this is one of the Cavs' biggest needs was a backup center, and no disrespect to Ed Davis, no disrespect to Moses Brown, who I really liked at the end of last season. But the Cavs needed a veteran backup center who could give you some points outside of rebounds at that position. And Robin Lopez, yes, he's bounced around the league. He's been on a crap ton of teams throughout his career, but he is one of those glue guys. He will be a guy that will be a great locker room veteran for this team. He is an enforcer, and if he gives you, anywhere between 6 and 10 points a night on 3 captain hook shots, with about 5 or 6 rebounds, that's all you really need from him. And I think that the Cavs scheme, with him out there, also with Kevin Love, who's getting double-digit rebounds off the bench, taking a little bit of pressure off him, so he's not the only rebounder on the floor. I think, and he, by the way, he plays a very similar game to Jared Allen, right underneath the basket. I think he is a great compliment, and I don't think you necessarily lose anything if for some reason JA would go down. One of the great things about Robin too is I think he could slide in there for a game or two and start if he needs to. If something were to happen to the great Jared Allen.
That's twice I've had to knock on wood because you keep saying stupid things. Don't you dare jinx Jared Allen, young man.
Hey, Jared Allen had those great two chase down blocks against Toronto. Phenomenal. He's played great against Chicago and Washington as well. We mentioned it. Jared Allen is the heart and soul of this team. And I think a little bit, JA is a little bit underrated. I don't want to say, necessarily among the Cleveland fan base, but I think nationally in the NBA, when you talk about the Cavs, a lot of people, are looking at Mitchell, they're looking at Garland, they're looking at Evan Mobley as kind of the Cavs' big three. And Jared Allen got almost snubbed out of the All-Star game last year. He basically did if it wasn't for some injuries. JA, we both think is at least a top three center, in the Eastern Conference at least.
Mhm.
He is a phenomenal player that I think, again, he is looking to really be, that guy improved to the NBA landscape this year, that he should have been a bona fide, no doubt about it, all-star last year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember his stats last game. I think it was like 14 points, 12 boards, three or four blocks.
Just does his thing every game. You know
Yeah,
exactly what you're
and
going to get
he
out of Al.
and he absolutely hates rims. Every rim he comes across, he tries to destroy. Um, but yeah, I mean, what he's. I mean, he's an anchor down low. He's as reliable as any player in the NBA is. He's going to have games where he's going to have 20 points and 18 boards because he could do it. And he's going to have points or games where he has maybe 10 and he's 10 and 10. But you're always, he's always going to be around or over that double mark. That first game, I think that they were struggling a little bit on the boards. And I mean, but that happens. That happened last year, and they kind of
Yeah,
fixed it. And
and they
Jared
cleaned it
Allen,
up.
yeah, and Jared Allen was really one of the anchors who was like, you know what, we need to get our stuffs
Yeah.
together. He's the one who kind of rallied around this, making sure that they're grabbing rebounds as much as they possibly can and be more aggressive towards it. But I mean, really, if I'm just taking a total of these first three games, and we really easily could be 3-0.
Yep.
But we're not. We're 2-1. That's what you predicted. You predicted last week 2-1, just in different games. And I said 3-0, and I was not very far off. So
Yeah.
you win, but not by much.
No, I mean, I do think, like you said, I thought, and again, maybe the Garland injury had something to do with that. I think me and you kind of both thought, like, Toronto, they were going to come out and they were going to make a statement. And Toronto really played the Cavs really well. And credit to them, because they played the Cavs really well last year as well. These two teams are a very interesting matchup. And Toronto was obviously a very hard place to play. But I thought it was a great sign for the Cavs. They did not get their head down. And when you start, that second game in Chicago, we both predicted obviously the Bulls would not be a playoff team this year. But you start 0-1, you're down in that game early, 10-2. I believe it was. Maybe some young teams pressure, and maybe that could have been a closer game than it came out, and they absolutely mollywopped the Bulls for the last three quarters, and they looked like a team who, after maybe about a five-ish quarters into the season, figuring things out, it looks like the last about seven quarters, they have really shown the true potential of this team, and I'm interested to see, over the next week. We're about to preview the next week's games. They have a game with Orlando tonight at the time of this recording, and then you got two games with the Celtics mixed in there with a game against the Knicks. So it'll be a really interesting opportunity to see how this team plays. And hopefully, obviously we get DG back as soon as possible.
This first week has been really interesting in the sense of there's teams that we thought would be at the very bottom of the conferences who have come out and shown that they can win games. And usually the first week, you just kind of take with a grain of salt. But I have been impressed with a lot of teams that I didn't think would be that good and have come out and had big wins against good teams. So that just kind of goes to show you that the NBA is one of those leagues where they're all professionals. You have a player to have an off night, and the other team can just take it full advantage and come away with victory. So uh Brandon, I know you have been dying to talk about one specific thing in the NBA this year,
Okay.
and I want you to bring it up because I want to go ahead and clear the air here on how we feel about it.
Okay.
So go ahead and go ahead and talk about it.
So there is a new rule this year in the NBA. It has been instituted over the summer, and we talked about it a little bit when this rule first came out. This is the new transition take rule in the NBA. And essentially what it is if the guy is on a fast break going to the basket, you now have to make a play for for the basketball for it to not be considered basically a personal foul on you. It is a little bit of the clear path rule, if you will, where if the NBA determines you are not making a play for the ball on a fast break, the team that possessed the basketball will get to shoot one free throw and keep possession. Um,
So
I know,
you can't wrap the guy up anymore who's on the fast break,
correct.
or starting the fast break, and it would be side out. You have to, if you do, they get the free throw and the ball.
And it's important to note, by the way, that this rule does not take into effect the last 2 minutes of the ball game. And I know Joey feels differently about this. I'm going to go on record here. I absolutely despise this rule. The Cavs had an opportunity early in the first quarter, Saturday against Chicago. We didn't see it at all Wednesday against Toronto. We saw it early on a play against the Bulls Saturday, and I believe we saw it one other time, as well as maybe once against the Wizards on Sunday. Every time I see it, in the back of my brain, I think personally it takes away strategy, and I understand there's two sides to the coin here, but I think it takes away strategy from the defensive side of the ball. Because if you do turn the basketball over, if I am a defense, the way basketball isn't played, obviously, we know with the open space and the 3-point shooting and all that. Basketball now mostly is about 3-point shooting and layups and defense. But as a defender, if you turn the basketball over, why should you be punished by giving up a layup when you have an opportunity to essentially stop the offensive player, force them then the way the rules were in place, force them to then take a side out, and so then even if you do make a mistake, you are able to recover and set up yourself for an opportunity to get a stop on the defensive end from a side out position.
And me and you talked about this, pretty good before the show. So this isn't like something that we're just kind of riffing off of. You look at it as from a defensive perspective. I look at it from an offensive perspective, it kind of as just playing devil's advocate. You force the turnover, you are about to score 2 points, and someone wraps you up, and then you take side out. The rule doesn't bother me because we've seen it a few times, but we've seen a lot more chase down blocks because of better defense, and we've seen you get you get the free throw and the side out, but if you miss the free throw and the side out, it's essentially the same as if you would have wrapped them up. So, but it makes the game more exciting because if you don't wrap, you can't wrap them up, you throw the ball forward, and then we get to see some vicious dunks. And that's exciting for us, the fans. Now, like you said, the rule is not in effect in the final 2 minutes. So that's where your strategy can take place. If you make a mistake, in the final 2 minutes, you can wrap the person up and it's side out. But as far as, the main rule, I think that it makes defenses need to become better in transition, which thus makes players just overall better, especially on defense. Everyone's running more. And like I said, we've seen a lot of chase down blocks this year, way more than we've seen in the past in the first 3 games of the season, because now these guys got to get back. They got to make a play on the ball or else it's a free basket. So a lot of running, a lot, the rule doesn't really bother me. I honestly haven't even noticed all that much. And, I think that there might be a game down the road where maybe it's called a few too many times and then it'll be another discussion. But I think that, the first 3 games, I don't hate the rule. It makes the game more exciting. It makes the players have to be more aggressive and run back. And obviously, if they don't, then it's 2 points. So,
and the NBA, for the record, said they made this rule because if this rule was in effect last year, there would be over 1,000 of those called in a season, which seems like a lot of it. So I think to your point, what they're going to try to do is to encourage defenses. My worry with this is, and I understand your point, I do. My worry about it is basically it comes down to NBA officiating. We know the NBA officiating, to me, at least out of the four major sports, is the worst, and to me, it's not even close. They miss calls left and right. Every foul call seems like it's a judgment call where one referee is saying something, the other referee is saying something else. And I can't remember exactly who was involved in the play because the first time I took notice of it was the game Saturday against Chicago. I think it was Dean Wade. And the reason why I took notice to it is because he did make a play on the ball. He was reaching for the ball. He got his hand on the ball, and they still determined it a foul, a shoot, and side out for Chicago. So, and I told you this, and we talked about this clarity and rules and all that. We can spend forever on it, but now it's going to be okay. What do you define as a play on the basketball? And if they call it consistently, I'm not going to have a problem with this rule. I'll give you that. But I don't think they're going to. I think it's going to be based off different officiating crews. And I said it when the rule came out, specifically on this podcast. I said, I know what's going to happen. It's going to win teams basketball games. There's going to be a play, some point, whether it's 3 minutes left or something, where you get an extra point that may give you, another possession lead, really close ball game. It's going to cost a team a game. It's going to win a team a game. And really, we're just going to hope that it's officiated consistently. And if it doesn't become a problem, then this conversation is obviously invalid anymore. But I think it's something that the NBA needs to monitor really closely here, at least for the first few weeks of the season.
I do want to say my last point on this topic. You said last season it would have been called 1,000 times, right?
Correct.
Well, how many times did that impact a game? How many times did a player, maybe a star player, pick up their second foul in the first quarter and have to be taken out of the game? And then that alters the game too, because now you don't have your best player or your second best player on the floor.
Well, it's still a foul though. It's still a foul either way. It's still a personal foul. So either way, they're going to pick up that foul.
Right, but you're probably not going to grab the person now.
Oh, that's a good point.
So now you're not picking up that second foul because if you do, you're sending them to the line and they get ball. And now instead of picking up that second foul in the first quarter or third foul in the second quarter, you're staying in the game, and the game's a lot more competitive because of you made a mistake, you lost the ball, you grabbed the guy side out, but it's your second foul, third foul, whatever it is, however many fouls per quarter, and then you have to be taken out now. Let's say it's Giannis. Giannis has to be taken out with 8 minutes left in the first quarter. Milwaukee's down, 12 or 13 in the first quarter. It happens again in the second quarter. Giannis comes out, three fouls. This saves those players from having to come out. You said over 1,000 calls. That's 1,000 fouls, which can impact the game a lot because now your starting players who might be, might be your best player on the team get to stay in the game. And that's what I'm going to end it for.
No, and I completely agree. And I know some of you are sitting at home with probably thinking, oh, this guy sounds like the guy who got mad with the NBA changed the height of the basket from 8 feet to 10 feet. But we will see on that. Joey, let's preview the next 4 games for these Cleveland Cavaliers starting tonight against the Orlando Magic, and one of my favorite players outside of the Cavs, outside of the NBA. I love me some Bol. I was on this kid since high school. Said somebody created them, probably NBA 2K11, 2K12 or something like that. You knew he was probably a middle schooler, or maybe he just entered high school. Then you find out he's actually a real player. You go on YouTube, you watch his highlights, you see what he did at Oregon, and then obviously, he goes to the NBA. The Denver gig did not work out. Detroit gig did not work out. Now he's starting in Orlando. And I got to tell you, my affinity for big man basketball. Orlando is trying to copy what the Cavs did last year. It seems like with their big, almost 3 foot, 7 foot front court, but nonetheless, they are a very young team. They have not won a game yet. They do have some good players, Franz Wagner, Cole Anthony, to name a few. But the Cavs, really, in my opinion, should win this game tonight and hopefully by double digits.
I don't know if it was the first or second game the Magic played, but they ran what I wanted the Cavs to. They put all of their big men in. They had Mo Bamba, Wendell Carter, Bol, one of the because they have both Franz and Mo
Friends, yeah.
Wagner, but it was whichever the one that's taller, and I can't remember who the fourth person was. It was basically almost an entire 7 foot squad, and
No, I did not see that. I need to see that.
yeah, it was awesome. You know what? I think the length on Orlando is huge, and I think that the Cavs could potentially struggle rebounding the ball a little bit if they don't get more aggressive. But as far as shooting goes, the Cavs have that down in spades. Cole Anthony really has been playing very well this year thus far for the Magic. Franz Wagner, real good player. I believe was a rookie last year. Was he a rookie last year? Or was it
Yes,
the
he
year
was.
prior? Okay.
I believe he was a rookie.
Yeah. And then like I said, just big length. Mo Bamba, Bol, Wendell Carter. So I think Jonathan Isaac's still on the team. I don't know if he's hurt or not
I,
though.
I I believe he is hurt.
Okay.
I know he's still on the team, but I don't believe he's going to play tonight. I think he's still recovering from the injury he suffered last season. Orlando reminded me a little bit of the Cavs a year prior to the Cavs being good. Like if that makes sense in a way. Like I can see Orlando building something. I don't think they're gonna be there yet. I think they're probably a year or two away, but their blueprint is very similar almost to what the Cavs did, obviously,
Well,
or Orlando got their big men
you
first.
you also can't forget Paulo Banchero.
Pablo Banchero, the rookie, yep, who has been phenomenal
Paulo
the first few games.
Paulo has been killing it. So yeah, I mean, I think that they're a little bit more. I'd say they're more of a poor man's Cavs last year. Because I don't think Mo Bamba is great. I think Bol usually he gives them like a good 14, 15, 16 minutes a night. But he usually packs those stats in those minutes. So it's going to be very interesting. Mobley's got to get more aggressive. Allen has to stay has to stay aggressive. But I think that the Cavs are probably going to kill him from the perimeter, and that's really going to be the downfall. There's just too many guys on the Cavs who can hit that three, and if you're going to be playing big men like that, it's not that easy to close out. Although Bol has been blocking threes he's been jumping from the foul line and
Yeah.
blocking threes. So, but obviously I'm gonna take the Cavs in this one. I think the Cavs are just gonna beat them from the perimeter, and then I think that if you do when they go small, the Cavs are gonna be able to get into the rim and and beat them in the paint as well. So I'm gonna take the Cavs, but I'm gonna say it's gonna be a little bit closer. I say the Cavs by 5.
Okay. Now, I'm going to get this right because if you guys were able to check out last week's episode, and Joey knows this, there may have been a little bit of a weird edit at the end of the video because for some stupid reason, said the Cavs were playing the Charlotte Hornets, their home opener, instead of the Washington Wizards. So I am going to get the next team right. We're going to make sure we are on the right screen. And here we go. Joey, Friday night, they are in the TD Garden for a matchup with the Eastern Conference Finals champions, Boston Celtics.
The Celtics have really only gotten better. I mean, they added Malcolm Brogdon, which was a huge pickup. They still got Derek White, Marcus Smart. Grant Williams isn't even getting that many minutes coming off the bench, to be honest. And he was a big part of their success last year. I believe Robert Williams is still out.
I believe so.
So they have Horford, but how effective is he going to be? For us, it really comes down to, can we stop Jaylen Brown? Can we stop Jason Tatum? I think that is going to be the question. Levert's going to do very good. I wouldn't be not be surprised to see a lot of Okoro in that game,
Yep.
trying to lock down one of the two. But I'm going to say that they're probably going to fall to the Celtics, and probably going to be about 8 to 10 points.
So interesting schedule nugget here is the Cavs will play Boston on Friday in Boston, and then we will play them Wednesday at the Fieldhouse. But then we don't play them again until March. So the Cavs get to see Boston early, and then they get to see them 2 times late. So it'll be really interesting to see, obviously, how both teams differ as they progress through the season. Before we get to that Boston game at home, though, let's go over the Knicks game. This will be the game before Halloween. They're taking on the Knicks at the field house again. And I think the Cavs have a chance to win this ball game. I really do. I think that they will fall to Boston. I don't think I officially made my prediction. I think that they will. I agree with you, fall to Boston. But then I think that they can bounce back here against the Knicks and win that ball game.
Well, I think they're going to absolutely bounce back against the Knicks, and it's going to be in spectacular fashion. I think they're going to beat the Knicks by double digits, and I think that they're probably going to lead the game most of the way, especially at home. You can see at home the Cavs just seem to have a little extra. They had a little extra bounce in their step against the Wizards, just until like I said, those last few minutes when they kind of took their foot off the gas. I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. And I think the Cavs are going to put a beating down on the Knicks, who lost out on the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes. And I would not be surprised if Mitchell had a big game against the Knicks.
No, I think Spider's going crazy against the Knicks, and then I think that will bounce back and beat Boston at home. So,
mm-hmm.
so to me,
I do too.
So to me, my expectation here is, the Cavs are 2-1 right now as we speak. At the time of next week's recording, could 5-2, I think, is a realistic mark to sit at. And quite frankly, at the very worst, to me, I mean, if you lose both games to Boston, like, okay, it's Boston. Obviously, we'll see how the games be played, but they have to at least go 2-2 in this stretch.
I think that I think that 2-2 is 100% going to happen, but I honestly do think that they're going to go 3-1.
I do too.
I think that one of these Boston games they're going to fall, and but I think it's going to be the first one. I think they're going to figure it out and they're going to come back. Really, I think a lot of it comes down to how healthy is Darius Garland. Is because when he went down and they said he wasn't coming back, I thought that maybe he, something with his retina.
Yeah.
And he was going to need surgery or something, and he was going to be out for a very long time. But very lucky. I think they said he scratched his. It was I think it was his eyelid, wasn't it?
And by the way, at the time of this recording today, I have seen videos of Darius Garland. He is in the Cavs facility today, working out, shoot around. Now he does have the sunglasses on, obviously, to protect his eyes. But to me, it's a really good sign, at least, that he is back on the court shooting with his teammates. And I would not, I'm not a medical expert or anything, but from everything I've heard, potentially that Sunday game against the Knicks or Wednesday against Boston, if they feel like, it's just a scratch eye or he can recover in time, we could see Garland on the court, which would, again, give the Cavs a whole new boost, because we have not really seen yet. We've really seen it for maybe a quarter and a half, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell together, and that will give the Cavs an advantage early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so if Garland comes back 100% against the Celtics, so it's a whole different ball game. But tonight I think they take care of business against the Magic, and then they just keep going forward, moving forward as this season chugs along. And hopefully, when we come back, they will be either 5-2 or maybe 6-1.
Maybe 6-1.
Maybe if the basketball gods are smiling down upon us.
If the Cavs start 6-1, it might be their best start since 2016, 2017, maybe 2015, 2016. It's been a long time since the Cavs have started 6-1.
I think 2015 was rough because it took them a while.
Yeah, it took them a while.
Yeah.
I think the year after we won the championship. I think we started off really hot that year, if I recall. But I mean, it's been a while. I know, obviously, we haven't seen it. So if they're 6-1 next week, and for all you Twitter machines and people on the internet that are out there saying, this so and so stinks, get rid of this guy, yada yada yada. At the end of the day, next week, if the Cavs are 6-1, we got a whole lot to talk about and really nothing to complain about.
No criticism in the first week of the season.
All right, and with that, we're gonna go and wrap it up here today for all things Cleveland Cavaliers, episode number 54. We are finally back on the train talking regular season basketball. We will be with you all season long. We got some things cooking, and we may even, who knows, we got a lot of surprises down the line here for the rest of the season. For Joey Schneider, Vice President of Operations for Believe Land Media LLC, I am Brandon Lewis, General Manager of Believe Land Media LLC. And Joey, I'm going to let you say it this week because you already know what's up.
Let them know.